Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to create morph-based heads. Okay, a lot of people are forgetting how to do this, but this is still a thing. I'm going to be using Cartoon Animator 4 today. Normally I stick to Cartoon Animator 3 because for what I do, CrazyTalk Animator 3 has more functionality and it's a little bit less buggy, but we are working with a technique that is sort of being pushed aside, so we can expect anything. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure we save, because we are most likely going to run into bugs and we don't want to have to keep starting over. So we're going to save our project real quick, and we're going to try to remember to save it every 10 minutes or so. It's very important. There's a lot of unexpected bugs, and based on what you do, the slightest thing could cause your program to crash. And hopefully it doesn't happen while we're doing this tutorial, but it is one of the things that you kind of have to live with if you're going to be working with Cartoon Animator 4. So a morph-based head is basically taking a static image and applying a sort of 3D mesh onto it so that we can manipulate it in a sort of a fake 3D space. The eyes are going to be turned into an independent area. The mouth is going to be able to open and close, and he is going to be able to sort of turn a little bit. The morph-based heads only work in the front view angle, but he will be able to tilt his head around to a certain extent. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to grab an actor here, and it's important to use an actor that you know that supports morph-based heads. So we know that G1 characters and G2 characters do support it. I'm not entirely sure if G3 characters use it. I don't use G3 characters that much, much less with morph heads. But it's something that, you know, it's worth experimenting later on. For now, I know for a fact that G2 characters do support morph-based heads. So what I'm going to do is I am going to grab, let me see if I have actually, I'm going to go to my desktop here, and I'm just going to grab a copy of Billy, and I'm going to drag him. That way we can go ahead and work with him. Now, naturally, you can work with any character that you want as long as it supports a morph-based head. But since I'm making a morph-based version of the head for Billy, I'm going to go ahead and use him. And just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to hold down the control key while dragging, and I'm going to drag an instance to the right side. That way we have a comparison point later on so that we can kind of see both of the morph-based heads and the standard sprite-based head in action next to each other. So now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and have one of these items selected, okay? Go into composer mode. That's this button up here on the upper left-hand corner in the tools panel. And while we're in composer mode, I'm going to select the head of the character. Then we're going to click on this icon here. If you hover your mouse over it, it says create head. So I'm going to click on that. It says, would you like to save the face profile before fitting? There's a train passing by, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. I'm not going to stop the recording because of it, but we'll power through it. I'm going to go ahead and select no, because it doesn't matter. I'm pretty much going to get rid of that altogether. And I'm going to look for that icon, that face, I mean. And here's the face. I'm going to open that. And here's in the face creator. So here it asks us to do some trimming. So we can use this cropping tool to draw an area around our head to be cropped out. So it's good to crop out as much as possible. Now you can Now, you can do this with any kind of photograph or image that you find on the internet. The best images are going to be the ones where the character is facing straight on to the camera and as symmetrical as possible. But you don't have to be that nitpicky. Now, ideally for this particular usage, I do recommend basically it is for illustrated characters, at least the demo that I'm working on. But obviously you can do with hand-painted characters, 3D models, any kind of rendered image or photograph. But in this case, we're basically doing image of whatever we already have. We're going to go on to the next phase here. I think we got a pretty good area cropped out. Do we want to apply it? Yes. So now we get these little dots here. We're going to zoom in a little bit, and we're going to put this dot on the corner of the eye. And so we're going to do the same thing with that one. And we're going to scroll down a little bit. Use the hand tool to drag around and the little arrow tool to select. So we're going to select this dot, and we're going to place it on the corner of the mouth and this one on the other corner. And for now, that's pretty much it. The program will pretty much do everything else. Hit the next button and we'll continue to the next step. Now, because this is a custom illustrated character, it's not as easy as a photograph of a human being. So there are some adjustments and hack jobs that we have to do to kind of trick the software into working with our illustrated facial structure. So what I'm going to do next is I am going to turn on this mirror mode. It's going to heavily ease the amount of work that we need to do. Okay. We're just kind of guesstimating where these dots will go. Now the purpose of these dots, I mean, doesn't have to be on the spot. The thing that we got to look for is the actual shape of the eye. We're trying to target that. We're trying to get it as accurate as possible. And ideally, you want to do it maybe a little bit outside of the actual illustrated line. I'm going to leave this right here so you can kind of see what happens when we just kind of leave it as is. So right now, if we do a calibration test or preview, we end up with something that kind of looks like that. It's kind of funky, right?
And some natural movement. Eyes closing and
it's pretty horrible. So let's play around with the head shape, see if we can fix that a little bit. And a lot of this is just kind of guessing around. Let's see what happens when we do that. Notice how these ears are still outside of that line.
Down, left, right, and some natural movement.
And those areas that are outside of the line, there's clearly some distortions happening
down, there. Left, right, and rolling.
All right. So let's keep playing around with it. Let's see what we get when we just full on go outside of the lines. Now this is technically supposed to be on the jawline, okay? It's very important to recognize that part. And this is like somewhere between the brow and the eye. And technically this one is supposed to be somewhere along here. Oops. I'm gonna have to go back because I accidentally went forward. So we're not ready for that step yet. Let's do some more previewing.
Up, down, left,
there's some distortions happening in the ear.
And some natural movement.
In general, the face
eyes
is
closing,
kind of in there.
And blinking.
The eyes are definitely
up,
not right.
Down,
the lips, there's some
left,
kind of
right, and rolling.
misalignment happening. And the nose does
A,
some weird stuff.
E.
So let's see what else we can do here. Now, unfortunately, we can't make this window bigger, or can we? That was promising. There we go. I think we can. It's just not very obvious. So, all right. So we're gonna click on this button here that says Detail Facial Mode. Okay, so right now we're working on basic facial mode. So we're gonna go to detailed version. This one we're going to extend out. And this is generally like for the hair and stuff like that. You know, just kind of give a buffer zone. It's just something that you'll have to play and just kind of guess around for a while until you can get it. So we're gonna try something like this, and we're gonna see what we can get out of it. Okay, it's basically trial and error. We keep going until we get something that looks decent.
Up, down, left, right.
Oops. So I guess the program doesn't like the window being resized, so that's a little bit of a bug there.
Up, down, left, right.
So we got something that
and
looks
some
like
natural
that.
movement.
It's still a bit distorted.
Eyes
okay?
closing.
And I don't like that, so we just got to keep messing around with it until we get something that's not distorted. We just got to keep playing with it. Unfortunately, there's no absolute right way of doing this. Let's try that.
Up, down,
It's a little
left,
bit better.
right, and some natural movement.
So let's adjust
Eyes
the bottom part
closing
of those ears a little
and
bit more.
blinking. Up, down.
So what is up with those ears? Maybe this line needs to be outside. Let's try it now.
Up, down, left, right, and some natural movement. Eyes closing.
Okay, let's straighten it out. Let's see if we can go with the natural curve of his head, even if we're way out there. That might allow us to get the results that we need. Let's see what happens. And this is just kind of a buffer zone. All right, let's give this one a shot.
Up, down, left,
Definitely looks a lot better.
right, and some natural
I'm
movement.
gonna go ahead and stop
Eyes
there.
closing
Obviously, on your character, you
and
take as
blinking.
much time as you need in
Up,
order to get it right.
Down,
For now,
left,
I think this is
right,
good enough
and
for
rolling.
demonstration purposes. So let's focus on these eyes next. So we're going to try to follow this outline as best as we can by manipulating these nodes. I'm going to turn on the mirror mode. That way I'm kind of doing both eyes at the same time. And ideally you want to be either right in the middle or outside of this line, because you don't want any of the white part to be on this skin area, okay? Because all this that's inside of this shape is going to be cut out, so you don't want the little white edges to be there. Let's take a look at just the eyes by itself.
Up, down,
So you can see on the
left,
edges where this white
right,
lines
and
kind
rolling.
of are there. On this one, it's not so bad.
down, left, right,
But on this one, there's a
and
lot of
rolling.
white there on the edges. So we're going to try to
Up,
get rid of that. And obviously, we can also cheat this step. If you wanted to, you can open up your image inside of Photoshop before doing
down,
this
left,
and just fill in this
right,
entire eye
and
area
rolling.
with this dark
Up,
color.
down,
That way, no matter where you cut
left,
it, you won't
right,
be having to
and
deal
rolling.
with these cuts here,
down,
those little
left,
edges of white and
right,
stuff. It definitely
and
makes
rolling.
things a lot easier.
Up,
But I like to
down,
leave the eyeball there
left,
just for testing purposes
right,
because while I'm doing
and
this, I
rolling.
can see how the eye's gonna spin and
Up,
stuff like that.
down, left,
Okay, so now we're gonna turn off mirror mode and we're gonna focus on the individual. On the individual eyes, because obviously this character is not 100% symmetrical.
up, down, left,
It's a little bit of white
right,
on the top
and
layer
rolling.
and on the corner here.
up, down, left, right, and rolling.
All right, so we're gonna push this just a little bit higher.
Up, down,
That
left,
seems like
right,
it's got
and
most of this
rolling.
eye.
up,
There's a little bit of white
down,
there
left,
and a little bit on
right,
that corner.
and rolling.
I'm not
Up,
sure if that's a big
down,
problem at this
left.
point. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be some white stuff here that that little white thing is going to merge with. But when he blinks his eyes, you know, that might still show up. So you know what? I'm going to push it down a little bit more. Let's see how that looks.
Up, down, left,
Very good.
right, and rolling.
Okay. There's a little bit
Up,
of white there, but for the
down,
sake of time, we're going to
left,
go ahead and leave it alone.
right,
I'm
and
going to go on
rolling.
to the next step. We're going to make sure that the eyebrows are adjusted. I probably should have done that with mirror mode. Now, if your character has an open mouth, or if you want to be even more intricate, you can open the mouth here and have additional nodes to play around with. But for my particular usage, I'm just gonna leave it like this. Let's test the mouth. We want that line to be right in the middle,
A,
and it's almost
E,
perfect. See how there's a little bit of
I,
lip on the top of that. So
O.
we're gonna go down a little bit.
A,
That looks pretty good.
E, I.
All right. Let's try some
Smile.
facial expressions.
Angry, sad, happy,
So slowly but
Surprised
surely, you know,
and
you continue
scared.
to tweak it until you get the
Smile.
results you want. So
angry,
it may not
sad,
be super
happy,
fast, you know, just
surprised,
point and click a
and
couple of things,
scared.
but if you
Smile.
fiddle enough with the settings, you're
Angry.
going to get the results you want.
sad,
We're going to go ahead for now and move on to the next step. I'm going to click this next button. And here we're going to basically select whatever our nearest head shape is. So right now it's configured to be like a basic human shape. And if we do that, we have a character that looks like that. And that accounts for a lot of the distortion on the sides. So we can do this box one, for example, also. and you can see what that looks like. But fortunately, they also have a round one, so this character is round. We can probably use this one. We might have even used this comic one. Let's see what both of them look like. So this is this round one. That looks pretty decent, and we can adjust the strength. So with the round, maybe a strength of 6. That's actually fairly decent. Let's try this comic face. That one, see, also looks pretty good. It adds some kind of volume to the cheeks, and the forehead brings it in. So I might actually use this one. Let's see what the heavy strength looks like. Okay, that's way too much. Let's try it on 8. So you're just gonna have to play around with your own settings to find the setting that's right for you. I'm gonna go back to 6. So that's a pretty decent result right there. I'm gonna move forward now. Click OK. Now, at this point, most people would call it a day, but there's just so many other things that you can do to just kind of really make this more solid. And we're going to get into that as soon as our head is applied to our character. Now, also, once you create a character head, a morph-based head for your character, there's a good chance that the alignment of the head is not going to be properly done. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this without moving it, without dragging, just double click. Okay, we'll give it a few seconds. Then when I double click again, okay, normally that is supposed to take us into Sprite mode, but it's not doing it this time. I guess they disabled that in Cartoon Animator 4. If you're using CrazyTalk Animator 3, you just double click on this a couple times and you automatically go into the Sprite mode. So we're going to go ahead and do that here manually. So once you open up the Sprite editor and you have the face selected, you can move the face around and adjust it. So I'm holding down the shift key, that way I can go up and down without accidentally moving it left and right. So I'm just going to place the head sort of where it needs to be here. I think it's something like that. So once I have that, I can turn off this sprite editor. That allowed me to move the sprite around without manipulating the bone. So the bone is still in the same spot. The character is still going to be able to bend his head along that spot. Don't worry if you see artifacting and different like color things happening to the body. We are totally going to throw that body away when we're done with this. We're just concerned about creating the head at this point. So the next step, I mean, we can test the face real quick and see what it looks like. Okay, so far, not so bad. Let's go ahead and add the new eyes to it. Now, if you click on this eye settings option, you're gonna get a little bit of an error first because we don't actually have an eye sprite added to it. So it's telling us to go to the content manager and select morph eye and apply it. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We're gonna go to the head, morph eye, and you can select any one of these, it doesn't matter. Let's see here. I would suggest doing whatever is the eye that more closely matches what you're trying to do. So here are some the cartoon eyes. So we can try that one, for example. I'm going to hit apply. And it's going to make our character look pretty weird. So don't freak out yet. I mean, in many cases, you might want that because it'll save you a lot of work. If we do a preview, you can see how it works. We can also do like a quick facial calibration.
up, down, left, right, and rolling.
All right. But obviously, this is not the character that we designed. Now, it's just perfectly fine if you're just building characters out of out of the blue, and you're gonna end up with what you end up based on your choices here. But I am trying to end up with a character that looks as close to my original as possible. So what I'm gonna do is now that I have this cartoon eye applied to it, I'm gonna go ahead and click on this button here, the eye settings button. And let me see, before we go any further, because we're getting a little bit deep right now, let's save our project, because I've been in so many situations where I've been working on a project and the software just crashes. And notice how right now the head is actually bigger than this one. That's something else that we can adjust later. So let's not focus too much on little things like that yet. So now that my project is saved, I feel a little bit better, a little bit more secure. I'm going to go into composer mode again. I'm going to click on the head, and I'm going to click on the eye settings button. And for the eyelash, we're gonna turn off the eyelash, okay? Because our original character doesn't have it. And we're gonna turn off the makeup because our character doesn't have it. And of course, you're more than free to play around with the makeup settings and things. You have settings there where you can adjust the, contrast, brightness, the opacity of the makeup. So if you want to have make use of some of the pre-defined effects, you're more than welcome to it. So, but for me, for my character, I'm just going to turn it off because my character doesn't have all that stuff. So this eyeshadow stuff, that is this area here. You can leave it or leave some of it there if you want to have sort of a 3D-ish effect. Me, I'm just going to make it as invisible as possible because basically my character doesn't have any of that stuff, but I'm gonna put just a slight amount, okay, and maybe a little bit blurry. I could work with the original iris that they have, because technically it's not that far off from my original character, so I could go in here and adjust it so he has my character's original eye color and just play around with it until I get the results that I want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my own. Now, before I started the video, I did create an eyeball, and the eyeballs are done in an image that's 512 by 512 pixels, pixels wide and pixels high. So here is one without the little glimmer, whatever you call this little light situation here, the little reflection, and here's one with it. Now obviously I control exactly how I want it to look, so, and this is going to be permanently set there if I use that. If I use theirs, I can basically make use of the dynamic one so that I can actually animate that separately. But I am just going to go ahead and import the one with the little glimmer on it, and we're going to call it a day. All right, so there is my character. Maybe I'll make the eye just a little bit smaller. Just adjust the scale there. That looks very much like my original one, and I still have that extra little glimmer. So I could basically, if I wanted to, I could adjust that, move it around, or import my own image. So if I have another image that I want to use, like an independent dot to use, I can use that as well. I'm just gonna, for my purposes, I'm gonna make it invisible. All right, I could remove it. I could do that too, but I like having it there because it gives me something to work with later on and play around. So I'm just gonna make it invisible. So here is what we are working with so far. If you go too far up and too far down, then a lot of the effect is pretty much lost. So that's one of the drawbacks. Let's look at this eyeball white. I'm going to bring in that same image. Doesn't really matter. It's the same size. That way we have something that kind of fits in along the same lines. Or I could have just brought in a completely white image with like little veins on it and stuff just to give it that extra. That's basically the image that's being displayed in the back. So I'm using the same image basically. All right. So I pretty much have my character the way I want in terms of the eye. So, and you can make left eyes and right eyes independent too, by the way. So you're not stuck with having to have two eyes that are exactly the same. That's just up to you to explore. So we got some weird stuff happening here. So before my program crashes, I'm going to go back out one more time and hit save. All right, so now that it's saved, we're going to go back into composer mode and we're going to work on the mouth. So the same thing, if I click on the head and I click on this mouth thing, it's going to give us a sort of an error. And that is because we don't have a mouth applied to it yet. But we're going into the mouth mode. And notice here where we have the throat selected, so we have something that has sort of like a tongue there and some kind of generic background. If we go to teeth, we don't have anything. And we don't even have the option to import any images. So that kind of sucks. Lips, I have no idea how those work. As far as I know, you need a base figure that has lips in order to use it, but I don't think Reallusion ever released them, so we're kind of stuck with something we can't use. Anyways, we're going to close this, and we're going to add a mouth. So let's see, we pick this mouth. Okay, so let's take a look at this mouth. Now that we have something in there, we're going to go to this calibration area, and we're just going to go to the mouth shape.
A.
So we can see a little bit of teeth back there and how it works with this character.
O.
Again, if it's good enough for you, you can pretty
U.
much just stop
And
there, you know?
Meow.
But if you want to have your own custom teeth, what we do is now that we have something in there to work with, we're going to click on that button, the teeth settings button, and we go to the teeth section, which is up there, and we're going to go import. Now these teeth are drawn, let me see if I can see the, at dimensions are 256 wide by 166 pixels tall. So that's the size of this square, and I'm going to show you guys that in a minute. So now we have our image there. I'm going to open up the teeth in a separate window here. Now when you do these, again, it's 256, I believe, 256 wide by 166 tall. Now when you draw these teeth, you want to draw them so that you have divided your rectangle there in half, and the top teeth are on that upper half, and the bottom teeth are on the bottom half, and they are not touching. So usually I leave about 10 pixels minimum of space there, so they're not touching in the middle, because this bottom portion of the rectangle is going to get cut up and moved up and down independently from the top. So let's take a look at what this looks like now by default.
A, E, I,
This looks a little bit weird.
O, U, and meow.
Okay, we're gonna hit stop. Kind of bring this down a little bit. We're gonna go into this mouth fitting area, the teeth settings, and we're just gonna adjust our settings a little bit. So the height, I'm gonna squeeze it in so we can see some of the gum line. The width, maybe wider or shorter depending on the type of character or the kind of idea that I want to represent. So that looks pretty decent. And I can also go, if I want to move them to the side a bit, higher or lower. I'm gonna go a little bit lower because I like my upper teeth and the upper gums to like really show when they're talking, and that's just a personal choice. You can also rotate them around a bit. So that's pretty much for the teeth, and we're gonna take a look at the throat in a minute because you can also add a custom throat.
A, E, I,
It looks much nicer.
O, U, and meow.
Okay, so I didn't get to see any of the top gums and stuff, but if I wanted to, I can go ahead and adjust it so I can. But he doesn't look that bad, so he looks pretty decent. Let's go back into that mouth area. And I mean, you can play around with the colors and adjust the different brightness and stuff. The throat, you could probably leave it like that. It looks decent. There's a mouth and there's sort of like a thing there. And I'm not entirely sure of the dimensions of the throat, so I just left them the same dimensions as the mouth, but I have a feeling it's supposed to be more of a rectangle, so it's probably 512 by 512. In this case, I did the wide aspect ratio. But I'm bringing it in, so now I have a more cartoony type of mouth. And basically, I'm not able to adjust the position or anything like that. I accidentally grabbed this head. Let's see if we can. Well, that's no good. I accidentally moved the bone. Let's see if we can put it back in its place. I'd say that's a bit of a bug there. It's not supposed to let me do that. All right. I'm just gonna hope for the best and manually put it in its place. Now, if you'll notice, there is a little bit of a white line down here. Let's test this out.
A,
You can see
E,
the throat there,
I,
but because I did a lot of Control Z, I accidentally got rid of my mouth stuff. Hopefully that puts it back in place.
A,
There it is
E,
at default. Let's do an adjustment one more time because I want this guy to look decent. So let's try him again.
A,
Much better.
E, I.
Okay, so the next step, we're going to try to get rid of that annoying little area. And depending on how you draw your characters, you may have a little bit or a lot. We had the benefit of using a PNG with a transparent background to start with, but not everybody's going to have that luxury. Sometimes you'll just be working with a standard image where you're going to be masking out the stuff manually. So that's what this thing here is for. We're going to click on this face mask editor, And you notice where this blue area stuff is? That is basically represents the stuff that's being cut out. So I can go in here and mask out this whole eye area. I can mask out like this area here. And that's basically going to cut it out. Let me see, there's a preview there, see? So that's how you can get rid of those extra little annoying bits. Let's see if we can undo. What I'm going to do on my case is I'm going to try and just kind of choke it a little bit. Maybe a 2 if I can get to it. Doesn't look like I'm able to just change it. Maybe I can change it manually. There we go. So now I don't have any of those little white areas. Edge blur. Maybe tone it down a little bit. I mean, it's a illustrative character. It doesn't need to be that blurry. Preview. Yeah, looks decent. Let's hit OK. It chokes it in, so there's no more of that stuff. And all right, so maybe the only thing that's left is making the sprite smaller. So I'm going to go to the sprite editor, select the head, and just kind of make it smaller. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. To try to get it to the general same size as the original. So I'm still dealing with a rather large head. Let's see here. And I just noticed one error since I was using, I guess, PNGs, the transparency. I need to come back and fill in those whites properly, but I'll worry about that later. Let's see if we can get this head to be closer to the right proportions. Let's use this runtime editor. Maybe that'll help. There we go. Hold down the shift. And that kind of helps get it to be about the right. That's close enough. Okay. So what we're going to do is, I guess in Photoshop, I'm just going to go to File, New, 512 by 512. I'm just gonna create a white image. export it. I'll do a JPEG. Save desktop. I'm gonna call it white. Let's see what happens when we go in here, because we don't want this to be transparent, obviously. Go into the composer mode. We'll go back into the eye settings. We'll use this white JPEG as our background. And that's it. Actually, no, that's not it, because it's using an opacity thing, and I kind of didn't bring it in. So it's still taking this black area and considering that to be the opacity. So let's remove that opacity. And let's just replace it. So ideally, you know, for the white, you probably don't want to have any opacity. So that should take care of that. Let's test it out. And I'm happy that our program has not crashed yet. So it's always something you got to watch out for. So there you go. There's no more transparent eyes. Our body sort of fixed itself. But just in case, we're going to take this body and apply the color styles from that one to this one. You won't see any difference, but it does happen. And there we go. Let's go ahead and save it before anything bad happens. And now we can test out the differences between morph-based heads and standard sprite-based heads. So on the left side, we have a sprite-based head. We're going to get an animation here. Let's get a performance. Excuse me. Okay, here's a guy that's talking or singing.
Da 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 dum, hoo yeah ba ba. Da 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 dum.
For some reason, it didn't move its mouth. I wonder if I have all my sprites there. Yeah, he has all his mouths, so yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Maybe there's just something wrong with that particular animation. I don't know. You never know what to expect. He's not moving his mouth. Okay. Let's see if our morph-based guy works.
Da 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 dum, hoo yeah ba ba.
Well, it's not cool because it's not a fair comparison if our G2 character is not going to respond. What can we do to test it properly? Let's see here. Remove object animation. And here is, what is this? Facial cry.
Da 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 dum, hoo
Dislike.
yeah ba ba. Da
Okay,
da
it
da
looks
da
like it's doing something.
da 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 da.
It just doesn't like that motion. Okay. So let's see if we can find a way to effectively compare these motions. All right. So let's see here. Scene animation. Face G2. So here's a sinister. It's taking a while. And the same animation here. You can see the facial expression is much better expressed. Let's try sad on both of them. We're going to go back to frame 1. It didn't do much for it. I have a feeling there's just bugs in here. Yeah, it seems to work fine on our morph base head. Let me run just to tickle my curiosity. I'm going to see if these bugs are there in CrazyTalk Animator 3. So I'm going to drop Billy. This is the Sprite based Billy. And we're going to get an animation, performance, G2. Let's try this TED one again. Yeah, it works perfectly fine. So the problem here is not the ability to work. It's just that Cartoon Animator 4 is a little funky. You know, there's bugs in there. So will they fix them? I don't know. But there is your difference. So here is a sprite-based facial movement. Okay, and that's the same movement as we're doing here. Let's rewind. And we'll apply that same performance. You can see there's a lot of warping happening to the face. You know, it's a little bit more expressive. So there's some benefits to using the morph base heads. The only problem is that they only work from the front. If I turn my character around, you kind of lose it. He can only have a front head. So that is a drawback to the morph base heads. They seem to be a little bit better at warping and squash and stretch and stuff like that, which is kind of cute. Another drawback is that, of course, they are raster based. So if you zoom in too much, you're gonna get into a situation where the more you zoom in, the more obvious it gets that, you know, you're using a bitmapped image. You can see the little pixels and it gets blurry and stuff. Whereas the vector-based, sprite-based system is infinitely good looking. What else can we do with this? Let's take a look at the facial puppeteering area. So if we click on this head or this character, go to animation, we're going to go to the face puppet. And I'm just going to hit this preview button here. And I'll put my mouse somewhere in the center and hit space. And you can see how I can move my head around. Blink. Look at the mouth, how the teeth kind of stay in there. It's a little bit of a 3D effect. If used sparingly, this could be good, you know? So the same thing here. If I click on this character, go to the face puppet. Now, CrazyTalk Animator 3, CrazyTalk Animator 3 does have facial puppeteering using your iPhone. This feature was removed in Cartoon Animator 4. So if you want that feature, you pretty much have to spend, I think, another $400 for that. It's $100 for the plugin plus another $300 for the facial profile. Kind of a ripoff, but I guess if you really want it bad enough in Cartoon Animator 4, you can do that, or you could just continue using CrazyTalk Animator 3 and use that. You can always export and bring it into this. So that's totally on you. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this morph-based heads tutorial. I hope I didn't leave too many things out. I hope I got to cover almost everything you need to know about these heads. And yeah, I hope to see what you guys can produce using this information. Let me know what you think. By the way, we have a new Facebook user group. It's called the Advanced Cartoon Animators User Group, or Advanced Cartoon Animator and Beyond group on Facebook. So look it up, Advanced Cartoon Animator. We're a brand new group. You're more than welcome to join. It's a public group. Everybody's welcome. And we're trying to basically do a little bit more advanced stuff using Cartoon Animator, CrazyTalk Animator 3, Flash, and After Effects, and all these user-friendly tools to create advanced cartoon animations. So if this is something that interests you, yeah, visit me at Advanced Cartoon Animator, the user group on Facebook, and join up. We'd love to have you there. Also, check out toontitan.com. Have lots of characters for sale, lots of free templates, lots of free tools for your cartoon animation needs. Till then, talk to you soon.